All right, get ready, because today we're diving deep into a concept that's like, well, it's fundamental to philosophy. Substance.
Yeah, substance, huh? It might sound simple at first, but uh trust me, philosophers have been going back and forth on this one for centuries. Literally.
And you know what? Understanding substance is
Yeah.
kind of a key. It's like a key to this whole philosophical world, It's how
Yeah.
they see things, build their systems, all that.
Absolutely. It's like the bedrock, the foundation of so much philosophical thought.
So let's break this down a little bit. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy,
Hmm.
which if you're into philosophy, it's basically like our Bible.
It's the go-to for sure.
It tells us there are like two main ways to think about substance.
Yeah, you got the big picture, generic idea, the what's it all made of question,
Mhm.
the fundamental stuff of reality, according to, whichever philosopher you're looking at.
So like, are we talking atoms with Democritus?
Yeah.
Or, oh, what about ideas and impressions like with Hume?
Exactly. It's like their core ingredient, the essence of existence in their system.
Right. So basically you're asking what's the universe made of?
Right.
But different philosophers have, well, wildly different answers.
Right. Now, the second way to think about substance is it's more focused, more specific. Like we're zooming in on an individual thing, the object itself, and we're looking at that in contrast to its properties or the stuff that happens to it.
Okay, so like I have properties, but I'm also the thing with those properties, not just the properties themselves.
Precisely. You, the listener, you're a substance in this sense.
Wait, hold on. I'm a substance.
Think about it. You have all these qualities. You're curious. You enjoy, hopefully, you enjoy podcasts. You might be, I don't know, wearing a comfy sweater.
Maybe, maybe.
But you are more than just those things, right? You're the thing that has those qualities. That's the substance.
Whoa, okay. Mind officially blown. But how does this all tie into, like, explaining something to a philosopher? Are they just walking around seeing a bunch of substances interacting, or what?
In a way, yes. But the catch is each philosopher might have a totally different idea about, well, what kind of substances are out there and how they, all fit together. If you really want to explain something to a philosopher, you gotta their take on substance. And to do that, we need to go way back, like ancient Greece, way back to the OG substance guy, Aristotle.
Speaking of going way back, here's a little fun fact.
Hmm.
The word substance actually comes from the Greek word for being.
No way, really.
Yeah, so you can kind of get a sense of just how huge this concept is. We're not talking about some random jargon here. This is about existence, like what it means to exist. And Aristotle was one of the first to really, dive deep into it.
His work in categories, that's the foundational stuff right there.
Yeah, categories is big.
He makes this distinction between primary substances, which are, individual things like you and me.
Like me, a substance. I'm still getting used to that.
He got it. And then there's secondary substances. Those are more like categories, human, philosopher, things like that.
So the individual versus the category they fit into.
Right. I always picture Aristotle, pointing at someone and going, you, my friend, you're a primary substance.
I love that. And what's amazing is categories, it wasn't just some niche book. I mean, this thing was a philosophical bestseller for like over 1,000 years.
Oh, yeah. Categories was huge, massively influential.
So if you want to get Western thought, like really understand it, you got to get Aristotle and his take on substance.
For sure. But it's actually in his later work, Physics and Metaphysics, where he really goes in on what makes a substance a substance. He brings in this power couple, matter and form.
Ooh, matter and form. It's giving like Lost Da Vinci Code vibes.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with this dynamic duo?
Think of, I don't know, a marble statue. So the marble itself, the actual material, that's the matter.
Okay, got it.
But then you've got the shape of the statue, how do I say this? The specific way the marble is sculpted, that's the form. It's what makes it a statue and not just a random chunk of marble.
Ah, I see. So it's not just what it's made of, it's how it's dot formed.
Exactly. And now think about that in terms of you. You've got, I don't know, flesh and blood, whatever, that's your matter. But what makes you you? Your humanness, your form.
Okay, so if I like suddenly sprouted wings and feathers, would that change my form? Would I not be human anymore?
That is a great question. And it gets to this debate that, well, people have been arguing about it for centuries. What is form exactly? Is it like this universal thing, the same for everyone in a species, or is it particular, like unique to each individual? Even Aristotle, he doesn't really give us a clear answer.
My brain is starting to hurt, but like in a good way. All right, so we've got Aristotle. He's got his matter and form. But did anyone else, pick up this substance idea?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It was like this philosophical wildfire. Medieval thinkers, people like Al-Farabi, Ibn Gebirol, Thomas Aquinas, they all ran with it. They took what Aristotle laid down and, well, they did their own thing with it.
So give me an example, how they interpret it.
Well, Ibn Gebirol, he had this radical idea. He said that all substances, except for God, of course, are made of matter and form, even like souls and angels.
I mean, even angels have matter? That's wild.
Right. It was a pretty big deal.
So basically, for Ibn Gabirol, anything that exists, anything you can point to and say that's a thing, has that same underlying matter and form structure.
Yep, pretty much. But of course, not everyone agreed. Aquinas, he pushed back on that,
Yeah.
Said spiritual substances, like your angels and souls, they don't have matter. They have essence.
Okay, so substance is getting more and more complex, more nuanced. Different philosophers with different interpretations, different answers to that question. What makes a thing a thing? This is good stuff. But wait, we haven't even touched the big names like Descartes, Locke, all those guys.
True, we've just scratched the surface. To really see how substance shaped the history of philosophy, we need to, well, move on to the next chapter. Welcome back to our substance deep dive. Last time we were talking about those medieval philosophers, wrestling with Aristotle and all that.
Oh, yeah. All that matter and form. Angels maybe having matter. It really felt like they were setting the stage for how we even think about ourselves in the world today.
And that's where things get, well, really interesting, because as we move into the early modern period, we've got this philosophical superstar who he changes everything. I'm talking about René Descartes.
Descartes.
Yeah.
The I think, therefore I am guy.
That's the one.
But what's that got to do with substance?
It's all connected. See, Descartes was a big proponent of dualism. He said mind and body, they're two totally different kinds of substances. Mind is all about thought, and body is about extension, taking up space.
So instead of like a bunch of types of substances like Aristotle had, Descartes just goes for two, mind and body. That seems like a pretty big shift.
It is. And this idea was like hugely influential. It shaped how philosophers thought about all sorts of things. Consciousness, free will, the whole relationship between, the physical world and the mental world. Thinkers like Spinoza, Leibniz, they spent tons of time trying to work through Descartes' dualism.
So like Spinoza went off and said there's only one substance, and it's basically God or nature.
Exactly. Went in a totally different direction.
Wow. That's some serious philosophical ambition right there. But let's stick with Descartes for a minute. His idea of substance seems pretty simple, right? Mind equals thought, body equals extension, end of story.
Not quite. Then we've got John Locke, another philosophical heavyweight, and he throws in his own wrinkle into this whole substance saga.
Oh, a plot twist.
Mhm.
I'm here for it. What did Locke bring to the table?
So Locke actually had like two main ideas about substance. First, he comes up with this mysterious pure substance in general. It was kind of a placeholder. Like he said, it's this unknown something that's underneath all the qualities we see in a thing.
A placeholder, huh? Like an empty container just waiting for like properties to fill it up.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. He even compared this pure substance to, get this, the world resting on an elephant, standing on a tortoise, which is standing on. Well, you get the idea.
So it's the ultimate foundation, but we don't actually know what it is?
Exactly. Locke himself said we can't really wrap our minds around it.
Trippy. So what was Locke's second idea about substance?
This one's a bit more down to earth. Locke said we get our ideas about specific kinds of substances. He called them sortals. We get them from looking at a thing's properties, the stuff we can actually observe. Like we know gold is gold because of its color, its shininess, how heavy it is, how it reacts to certain things.
So like we're making judgments based on what we see and experience.
Right, but he also thought there was this hidden real essence underneath, behind all those observable qualities.
So it's like all that stuff we see, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's this deeper hidden nature to gold, to everything really, that we might never fully grasp.
Precisely. And that real essence, it's connected to the sortal. It's what makes gold gold and not just some, shiny, heavy stuff.
So it's like this constant mystery. Substances have this secret inner nature, but we're stuck trying to figure it out based on how they look and act.
Pretty much. And of course, no philosophical discussion would be complete without, a healthy dose of skepticism.
I was just thinking that. Time for some philosophical doubt.
Right. And that's where David Hume comes in, the ultimate skeptic. He questioned this whole substance thing. Like maybe it's all just an illusion, a trick our minds are playing on us.
It sounds like Hume's about to drop some serious philosophical truth bombs. How do you challenge the idea of substance?
Hume, classic Hume, argued that our idea of a persistent, unchanging substance, it's just that, an idea. We see a bunch of properties, a series of changes in our minds. Well, they try to make sense of it all by coming up with this underlying thing that stays the same through time.
So it's like a magic trick. No real rabbit, just a really convincing illusion.
Exactly. For Hume, what we call an object, it's really just a bundle of perceptions, always changing. No unchanging substance underneath, no core thinginess holding it all together.
Okay, my brain is officially doing backflips. So if Hume's right, what does that even mean for like how we understand the world? Is everything just like fleeting and temporary?
That's the million-dollar question. And it takes us right into some of the biggest issues philosophers are debating right now. If there's no underlying thing to an object, how do we explain change? Identity. Like, how are you still, even as you learn and grow and change over time?
This is where my brain starts to melt a little bit, but in a good way. I'm really starting to see how this substance thing, it's not just some random philosophical puzzle. It's really at the heart of how we understand, well, everything.
You got it. And to really get into those implications, we need to jump into, well, the world of contemporary philosophy. And that's where things get even more complex and even more fascinating. But we'll save that for part 3 of our substance deep dive.
Welcome back for the final part of our substance saga. It's been a wild ride. We started in ancient Greece, made our way through the early moderns, and now we're ready to tackle how contemporary philosophers are, wrestling with this age-old concept.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Even after like centuries of debate, we're still asking those same basic questions about substance.
No.
What makes a thing a thing? Is there something more to an object than, just the properties we see?
Right. Last time we ended with Hume and his radical skepticism about substance in general. He basically said it's all just bundles of perceptions, no underlying thing to hold it all together. So where do we go from there?
Well, contemporary philosophers, they're all over the place, exploring all sorts of different approaches. One of the big debates going on is all about the independence criterion.
Okay, refresh my memory. What's the independence criterion again?
Basically, it's this idea that substances are independent in a way that properties aren't. Like, properties depend on substances to exist. You can't have redness without a red thing, right?
Yeah.
But the substance itself, the thing, it doesn't like logically depend on any particular property. It could have different properties or even lose some properties and still be the same thing.
Okay, I think I'm following. So like a
Yeah.
chameleon, it can change color, but it's still the same chameleon, right?
Exactly. But then things get tricky when we start talking about essential properties.
Mm.
Those are the properties that a thing absolutely has to have to be that kind of thing. For example, to be human, you have to be rational.
So how can a substance be independent of its essential properties? That kind of sounds like a contradiction.
It's a real head scratcher, a genuine philosophical puzzle, and it leads some philosophers to say, nope, the independence criterion just doesn't work. So they come up with alternative theories of substance, things like bundle theory.
We talked about that a little bit earlier. That's the idea that substances are really just collections of properties, right?
Mm.
No mysterious substance hiding underneath it all.
You got it. For bundle theorists, once you list out all the properties of a thing, that's it, you're done. No extra ingredients, no secret thinginess beyond the properties themselves.
But if that's true, how do we explain change? Like, if a substance is just its properties, and those properties change, does the substance stop existing? If I, dye my hair purple, am I not me anymore?
That's one of the big challenges for bundle theory. It kind of makes substances seem really temporary, always in flux.
Yeah.
Some bundle theorists, they try to get around this by saying there are certain essential properties that define a substance's identity, even when other properties change.
So maybe it's not all the properties bundled together, but like a core set of them, the ones that really make you you.
Hmm.
Interesting. But what about the philosophers who aren't buying into bundle theory at all? What are they saying?
Well, some argue that there's just got to be something more to a substance than a bunch of properties, They look at the fact that we can recognize the same object over time, even when it changes. So there has to be some principle of unity, some glue that keeps that bundle together and makes it one distinct individual thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, a car is more than just a pile of parts. There's something about how those parts are arranged, how they work together that makes it a car.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of a thin particular comes in.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but I'm not totally sure I get it. Can you break it down for me?
Sure. So a thin particular, it's like this bare minimal thisness that sits underneath all the thing's properties. It's not a property itself, but it's like the subject of those properties. It's what makes this thing different from that thing, even if they happen to share all the same qualities.
So it's like this metaphysical anchor, something that grounds all those ever-changing properties.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. But of course, not everyone is on board with thin particulars. It's a very lively debate in metaphysics.
Okay, this substance debate is getting pretty complex, I gotta say.
Yeah.
We've got independence criterion, bundles of properties, thin particulars, my head's spinning. But you mentioned sortals earlier. How do those fit into all of this?
Oh, yeah, the sortals. Remember, those are the classifying terms we use to put substances into groups, things like human, tree, planet. And some philosophers, they say that sortals are super important for how we identify objects and how we recognize them as the same thing over time.
So if I see like a tall brown thing with leaves and I call it a tree, I'm not just describing what it looks like, right? I'm saying something about its deeper nature, its treeness. And that treeness helps me recognize it as the same tree, even as its leaves change color or fall off.
Right. And David Wiggins, a philosopher who's done a lot of work on this, he argues that each individual substance probably falls under only one ultimate sortal. And that sortal is what determines its unique identity. So, what's your ultimate sortal, podcast listener? Are you a human, a student, an artist, a philosopher? Something to think about.
Wow, that's a deep one. It's like our ultimate sortal is our true philosophical name. It's the
Oh.
essence of what we are. But with all these contemporary theories flying around, I've also heard there's been a sort of revival of Aristotle's hylomorphism.
Yeah, you're right. Some philosophers are finding that Aristotle's ideas about matter and form, they still have a lot to offer, even in our modern, scientifically minded world.
But hasn't modern science, like especially physics, kind of moved away from the whole idea of form? We explain things with atoms and molecules now, not forms.
That's the challenge for contemporary hylomorphists. They're trying to figure out how to make Aristotle's ideas work with what we know about science. Some philosophers, like William Simpson, they argue that maybe physics doesn't have all the answers. He points to certain interpretations of quantum mechanics that suggest, big everyday objects like tables and chairs and people. They might have causal powers that can't be explained just by the laws of physics.
So maybe there's still room for form to play a role, even in a scientific universe. Maybe it's the missing piece that explains how all those atoms and molecules actually come together to form, a functioning whole.
Could be. And then there's the whole question of teleology, the idea that purpose or function is built into a thing's nature. This was a huge deal for Aristotle, but it kind of fell out of favor in modern philosophy, especially when it comes to science. But some hylomorphists today, they're wondering if there's a way to bring teleology back, make it work with a naturalistic worldview.
So maybe there's more to a substance than just its physical parts and properties. Maybe there's also an element of what it's for, like a purpose or a function that's part of its essence.
Yeah, it could be. It's a complicated issue, and it really affects how we see the world, how we see ourselves in the world.
Well, there you have it, listeners. We've explored like centuries of philosophical thought from Aristotle's Matter and a Form all the way to Hume's skepticism and the latest ideas in metaphysics. It's been quite a journey.
And like any good philosophical adventure, we end up with, well, more questions than answers. What really struck you from all these different perspectives? What ideas resonated with you? And maybe the biggest question of all, what is the substance of the universe itself? Is it like pure potential, a sea of quantum stuff, a divine mind? That's for you to ponder as you continue your own philosophical exploration.
Yeah, keep those philosophical wheels turning, listeners.
Yeah.
And join us next time for another deep dive into the world of ideas.